Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to the Straight Out of Prison podcast. My name is James K. Jones, and this is my story.
And I am Haley Jones, and this is his story that has now become a part of my story.
Well, season 1 is a wrap, so we've had so many comments and suggestions and questions that we thought it would be proper to just do a recap show. So we're going to call this the season 1 recap.
I'm super excited about this.
This is fun. This is, it's been 3 or 4 months since we started this, and it's like, it's crazy.
Not 4, only like 3, barely 3, maybe.
Yeah, it was in October. It was in October when we got the idea, and then we started.
Oh, yeah, okay. So from there, yeah.
But just the feedback we've been getting, and I feel like I've found, I know I have like a purpose and a calling, but I feel like I found another piece to that I've thoroughly enjoyed this, even though it's been, parts of it's been hard to deal with.
I have to say the last couple episodes when we have been recording, I have just noticed, like looked at you and like thought, he is like doing his thing. It's like very natural, which surprises me for you.
Well, I've always liked to write, but like, just this talking thing is so much easier than writing. You just get it out.
Who knew that you would like to talk?
Yeah. I think the thing that's caught me the most off guard was after we published the first episode, the backstory.
Yeah.
We were at a birthday party with some friends and some people that, there's a lot of people there. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the guys gathered around me and were wanting to talk about the podcast. And I just felt naked, like vulnerable. And that caught me off guard because I've always, I've always been open about my story. I've never had a problem sharing it before, but it really, it was just a weird, vulnerable feeling.
Why do you think it had that effect on you like that?
I think it's because, like, you can say, oh, I was in prison or this, that, and the other. And, people may or may not ask questions, but when you start from the beginning, like, we weren't even supposed to go into all the backstory. That just kind of happened as we were going. Remember, the first episode was supposed to be Arrested, but
right.
You turned into Chris Wallace from Fox News and started asking me the deep questions, and which were great. And there was some healing in me for that too, though. It was just like connecting the dots, and it was the script that was written for me from the enemy, but God had a different plan for my life.
It's funny because the visual I get when you're saying that is, we all have a story. We all have things that have happened to us and things that we've done, from childhood on. We all have a story. It's almost like your book, like the book of James, has been opened up for people to read and see. And not all of that is flattering or things that you're proud of.
Yeah.
And so I can definitely see how it has made you feel vulnerable.
It has, but I feel like I'm getting over that now. It's not bothering me so much more. I've always felt like, stories are what you remember. Stories are what help you learn. Stories are, when they're true. Stories are powerful. So I'm excited to get it out.
Yeah.
I have a friend that I worked with at the Foundry who has a similar background to mine. He's been to prison, had addiction, all the things. And his wife was like, I said, oh, we need to tell so-and-so about our podcast. And she was like, oh, he knows. He told me, can you believe James is doing that? And it was like, that kind of, most people don't want to share. They want to share the good. They don't want to share the bad and the ugly. But I think for me, like, examining the bad and the ugly is how I know how I got there and how I can do something different. So stay tuned.
Yeah, because there's still some bad to come.
Yeah, well, there's good and bad in everything. That's part of life. You learn how to accept and change and allow things to be different, and you choose different. So, yeah. But in this one, we've got a ton of questions. We've got a ton of comments. I think probably the top question that I've had, and I would say you asked me, but so many people have asked me, is what happened to my cousin? So
your co-defendant.
My co-defendant, and that's in episode 1, 2, and 3. I talked about, the backstory, how we started doing crime together, then we, ended up getting locked up together and going to prison together. His story, after I went to prison in 1994, I never really had contact with him after that. He went to an adult prison. I went to a youthful offender prison. I got out in September of 1999. He was released in, I believe it was 2003. By that time, I was jaded. Like, I'm not going to, there's going to be no relationship between us. And actually, his family, there was no relationship with any of them. And when our grandmother, my meemaw, when she passed away in 2003, we were actually pallbearers together. We carried her casket.
Right.
And I just never looked at him, never acknowledged that he was there. I mean, probably that was kind of harsh, but I felt like, I'm not going to do anything that's going to jeopardize my freedom, and I'll never be caught in a situation like that again. So I felt like the best way to do that was just to keep that door totally closed. He got out in 2003. Within a year, I think, he was back in prison. He got out again, went back again. He went back and forth like that for about a decade, I think. When he got out in 2010, I believe it was, his mom, my aunt, had a stroke, and we all went down there, to check on her, and he was there. And I just felt like it was time to forgive. And I forgave him. We hashed it out. He forgave me. He was upset with me about something he read in some of the court documents about the original story I told that he pulled a gun on me. And I was like, you're the one that told me to say that. Like, that was the plan. So we found I forgave him, he forgave me. We became, I guess, not in a relationship, but I did reach out to him and try to help him. It was his first year out, and he was really trying this time to do something different. I gave him all my life after prison material. He went through it. But the one piece of advice he didn't take was, you got to get away from your environment. You can't go back to where you came from and expect something different. And he couldn't do that because, he wanted to be with his family. And sadly, he was out for 2 or 3 years, and then he got back on drugs. And he carjacked an unclothed officer in Columbus, Georgia, and now he's in prison in Georgia serving a prison term there. So I pray for him often. I've thought about writing him a letter to try to encourage him, maybe tell him about the podcast, but that's where he is now. So, I mean, it's sad. I mean, but that's the true story of 76% of people who get involved in crime and get caught up in the criminal justice system is that it becomes a lifetime thing, and that's just something that I can't.
That's what I was going to say, is that's definitely more the common story.
Yeah. Well, the way we did it when I helped design a reentry program when I was working with the Foundry was if you line up 10 guys coming out of prison, so 7 of them are going to go back within a year. So we try to focus on the things that could help the 3 turn into, 7, 8, 9, 10. Mm-hmm. And that's been my passion. I mean, that's still my passion. I've always want to help people. But I've learned through working for a nonprofit like that is nothing's going to change until you decide that you want to change. And it's hard, but, anything beats being locked up in a prison cell.
Yeah.
And if I'm ever feeling sorry for myself, I have this little exercise I do. I walk outside when it's dark because we're never allowed to do that. And I'm just like, hey, it's dark and I'm free and I can walk outside. And I probably never even told you I do that.
Actually, no, I've never heard.
I do that a lot when I'm discouraged. I'll just open the door and walk outside and be like, look at me, I'm free, And I've been out now for going on 22 years, but it's
look
still.
Look at me, I'm free.
Well, I mean, it is, and it's just a different thing. And the fall, I love the fall. We never saw leaves fall that whole time because there are no trees on a prison compound. They can't have trees. So there's no leaves. So I can look at the leaves and just be grateful, have gratitude. But that's where he's at. And, I still love him. We'll probably never be in a close relationship with him again unless, something drastically changes. But that's the answer to that question.
Okay.
So another question I've gotten a lot of these from people, especially women, is what does my mom think about the podcast? Do you want to speak to that? I know it's tough for her.
She does not listen to the podcast.
Yes,
she doesn't
refuses.
Want to listen to the podcast. She will read the little excerpts on Facebook, social media about what it's about, and then she thinks she remembers and knows things.
She's heard the whole story. But yeah, she refuses.
But she doesn't. Or like maybe some of her family members will tell her that they listened to it and say something. And so I think it was last week. I was like, Norma, are you actually listening to it? She's like, well, no, I'm not listening to it.
She won't. I mean, it's hard for her. And I understand. I don't have a problem with that. I used to watch Lock Up Raw on MSNBC. I don't know if you know what that is. But it was where they went into prisons with cameras and stayed a couple weeks. And they actually did Atmore in Alabama. And I would watch that, and I was interested in it, and she would like come through and be like, why are you watching that? Can't you just put that behind you and forget about it? I would never watch that. So, but it's just different people, I guess, deal differently. And my mom's way of dealing with painful things has always been to what she calls, I put it in a little box, and I lock my box, and I put it to the back of my mind.
Throw away the key.
Yeah. So, but she's gave us our blessing for doing it, but she doesn't like it. Yeah. So, real quick, as we were recapping, we went through the first 10 episodes. There was one that I wanted to bring some clarification to. In episode 4, when we were talking about the county jail, I talked about, you have to wear prison slides when you take a shower or anytime your feet touches any kind of floor. And Haley had a different version of the prison slide story. But you said in the thing it was a very positive thing about you went and bought some prison slides and then you bought some for Lula. But after we taped it and I listened to it, I was like, hold up, that was not the for real. That was not for real. That was not the story of what happened. What happened was I bought myself a pair of the Adidas slide-on flip-flops.
He bought himself some prison slides.
Yeah, and I told you, these are my prison slides, and you told me that I was not allowed to leave the house wearing those.
Okay. I don't say you're not allowed to leave the house. When you went to walk out of the house, I was like, are you going to wear those? As any good wife would.
So basically, you didn't want me to be seen in the prison slides.
Well, they just looked, I don't know.
It wasn't a good look for you. But here's what happened, guys. Within like 2 weeks, I couldn't find my prison slides, and she was wearing them. So I finally said, look, you hate them, but you're wearing them, so you need to go get your own.
Well, they're very convenient just to slide your foot in. And I could start to appreciate
they're nice.
That convenience.
So what ended up happening was she went to like Belk or Parisian or wherever she gets her shoes.
Belk or Parisian.
Whatever. Well, Parisian, I guess, is not around anymore. I go to Old Navy and TJ Maxx. That's where I get all my clothes. You went to somewhere fancy, and you came with you came out with some prison slides with the MK on it. What does that stand for?
Michael Kors.
So
and they were nice.
Some kind of rich Caucasian prison slides. But then we did buy Lula some.
But I feel like they've come back in fashion, especially for athletes. I've seen a lot of, athletes that take off their shoes and slip on, the prison slides.
They're not prison slides to them. But what happened was we were somewhere buying shoes, and I found some for Lula, and I bought her some that were sparkling and had jewels on them. And I don't think what I'm saying that my kids are going to repeat every word that I say. But I told her I bought her some prison slides, and when your sister, Abby, came to visit, Lulu was like, Aunt Abby, look, Daddy bought me some prison slides. And Abby thought that was hilarious. But anyways, that's the real story of that.
The real story.
What really happened.
It's a little more of the story, maybe slightly exaggerated.
No, there's no. I remember, because you did not want me to have the prison slides.
Well, that's true. I agree. That's true.
But now we all have them.
Now we all, and that's also true.
So some of the things that some of the feedback I've gotten from Deidre, who is
my friend,
it's Haley's friend, but she is not someone who knows anything about prison. As are a lot of people.
Her and I are kindred in this way.
Yes, and I love Deidre. She told me, I listened to episode 5 today, and I learned about the sissy, the boy, and the hustler. And it was so funny to hear her talking like that. And then Jennifer,
another friend of mine.
You might want to say what she said.
We were talking, she was listening, and she just realized that she said, gosh, I just realized it's something I've kind of known, but about, you had said you got away with a lot of things and your mom let you get away with and kind of covered things up when you did small things and there was never any consequences. And that you felt like that maybe if there had been consequences early on, it might not have gotten you to the point of, going to prison.
With the little stuff.
And so just with her boys, that nothing huge or big, but just recognizing, which is true for me too, as a parent, that giving our kids consequences or giving her boys consequences was kind of important because
it's very important.
It helps them grow and helps them understand that there are consequences. Because as a parent, I think our natural instinct is to, fix it, make it better. Like, it's okay. I know it was a mistake. Next time do better or whatever.
Yeah.
Because we want to protect them. We think we're protecting them. But sometimes, what we think is protecting them is actually not protecting them at all.
No, it's helping them. It's helping them get worse. And we're big on consequences for our kids. I mean, we're not like strict authoritarian parents, but one of the cutest things I think that Lula does, and I can see how you would, easily like just let something go, is she'll say, "Oh, but Daddy, I don't want a consequence." but I always tell her, I've got to give you a consequence because that's going to help you learn, and then next time you won't make the same. You won't have that same problem again. So I think that's good. I've got some fact checks. Joey, who is in law enforcement, is one of our top listeners. He fact checked me on episode 5. I said that I didn't think Alabama had a youthful offender program. He let me know that they do. So that was good to know. Wayne, he wanted to know from episode 7. He wanted to know what happened to the guy who escaped when it was the episode about BCI. And there was a guy that escaped, and he said, I really want to know more about his story. And, hopefully he's happy and, living on a beach in Mexico, living his life. And then he said, wait, unless he was like a child molester or a rapist or something really bad. So, but he wanted to know more about that story. And I think we just barely glossed over that in episode 7. There was a guy, he was a young kid. His name was G-Rai. I won't say his whole name, but his last name was G-Rai. He was a little bitty kid, skinny, but he was a very good criminal. He was into stealing 18-wheelers. And I don't even know how he drove an 18-wheeler because he was a little kid. He was only like 18 or 19, but he had like a 25-year sentence, which was unheard of at a youthful offender camp, but they had to send him there because he was so young. But his mom had died when he was young, then his dad passed away, so he had no family. He had no aunts and uncles, cousins. He had nothing. He was on his own. So he would always say he could escape and go create a new identity because there was nothing tying him to anything. And he said that a lot, but nobody ever really took him serious. I mean, we're locked up in prison. But he worked for maintenance. He was very smart. He was smart. He was very smart. Like, he could figure stuff out. He ended up coming up with a way. He jacked up a door. He took a jack, or 2 or 3 jacks actually, and welded them to the ground and jacked up a back door, like a gate, like 7 inches. And when they closed the maintenance shop, he stayed in. And he got in there and just wiggled himself out and was gone. And he was gone for like 3 hours before they couldn't clear a count because they were one missing on BCI that night. And he was gone. And by the time they started looking for him, he was long gone. But he freaked them out. The police went crazy. Like, they came in, running around with guns, and it was rough. But he got away, and we were rooting for him. I know that's not right, but that's where our minds was in.
It is kind of exciting.
Well, he was on every news station. Like, you could just turn on the news and see, and there was G-Rai. He made it from Central Florida all the way to Georgia.
Wow.
And he turned around and came back. He was from Tampa, Florida. He came back and went back because he wanted to see his girlfriend one last time.
Oh, the girl always gets you.
So he could have got away. But when he went, he spent the night with her and slept on her couch, and her mom called the police and turned him in. So he was gone for like 2 weeks, and they had an assembly with us after that explaining the escape to us. And they said he's going to get so much time that his parole or probation officer is not even born yet. That's how much time he's going to get. So So if y'all want to do an escape,
That's horrible.
you need to remember that. And it's true. If you're ever going to escape, you're so.
Oh man, it stinks though that he went back for the girl. It's like a movie.
But he knew what to do. You got to go. You got to get out of here. You got to go. Go to Ohio, go to Canada, go to Mexico, go somewhere else. But and that was his only tie, was his girlfriend, and he wanted to see her one more time. Katie asked about my brother, because most people that know me, I usually say I'm my only child because I grew up, from 1 to 5, I was an only child. From 5 to 10, I had a brother. After that, I was an only child. So I've kind of been an only child, except for those 5 years I had my brother. She wanted to know a little bit more about that, what happened to him, and was fascinated because she knows my mom. Is that your mama's son? And yes, he is. His dad took him and ran off with him when he was 5. And when I was 17 and he was 12, his dad got leukemia and died. We went to Atlanta to try to get him. When we got there, he wanted something to do with me. He wanted nothing to do with my mom. He wanted to stay with his grandmother. And there was some legal battles that went on for a little while. And finally my mom just kind of gave up and let him stay with her. So I have a relationship with him now. I don't really want to tell a story because that'll come later. But that was heartbreaking for me. It was part of, what trauma that crushed me. I still sometimes wake up in the night thinking about my brother and, wondering where he was and, what he was going through. And December the 5th, that was his birthday. And that was always just like a day of mourning at our house. Like, where's my brother? But he's doing good.
This is one of the hardest things for you. I mean, I know it's been one of the hardest things for you to talk about, for you to process, even as a grown man. And just to make just another notation is that, that you lost touch with him for many years and found him again when you were, 35 or something?
Yeah, it was that. We'll cover that when we get to that.
Okay.
But he's alive and well. He's my baby brother, my Bubba, and I love him. And from what I'm saying, he's listening to this podcast. So, love you, buddy. Elizabeth from episode 9, she is dying to know who Edge is. We talked about Edge. He was, I called him the BCI Emperor, and he taught me about prison commerce, and, he was a hustler. Not really illegal, but there's some stuff we weren't allowed to do that he did. Nothing like criminal. But I noted that I didn't want to say his name because he is actually a media person now. He's been out for quite some time, doing well. He's got a family.
And he asked you not to use his name, right?
Yeah, so we're not going to say his name, but he's doing good.
Maybe one day. It's funny because he falls into that category, I think, of who you're talking about when we were doing that dinner party, of people that just do not want their past to... Yeah. I guess they're the fear of haunting their present and future.
Well, it can. When I started Kairos in 2006, the news, local Fox 6 News called and said, "Hey, we heard about your story. We want to do a segment." And I was like, "Come on!" Like, it was day one. I was like, "I need all the advertisement I can get, to get this thing up and going." So they said, "Well, we want to tell your whole story," and I was like, "That's fine." And they did. They talked about, being in prison, drugs, crime, moving to Birmingham, and, starting my first restaurant. And my phone started ringing off the hook with people from my previous job that never knew that I was in prison. And they were like, this one lady in particular was like, "James, I never knew you'd been in prison." And I said, "Well, you never asked. I mean, but I never kept it a secret either, but I'm not going to wear it as a badge." But she said, "I just wanted to share that on TV. That goes out to 1 million people in this area." So I was like, "Well, that's you. I'm going to tell my story. I mean, I'm not going to glorify it, but I'm going to be who I am." I think that's the only way to stay free.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, I don't know, for me, like, even being married to you, it's like just easier instead of like, wondering who knows. who knows what. Like that's something about that is very stressful.
Well, no,
stifling.
once you put it out there, I mean, if you try to hide stuff, then people have something they can use against you. And that to me is bondage. That's a different kind of prison, and I'm not going to be in that kind of prison.
Yeah.
And if you don't like me because I have a past and a background, I'm sorry. I mean, great. Next. But that's that. So I've had multiple questions. People trying to search Facebook for. We talked in episode. What was that? Episode 4 about my girlfriend that I had when I got locked up, and the letters and the calls,
which was hilarious because I didn't even know until we recorded that you were like that somehow still connected on social media.
Well, I said that on there.
Like, really?
But then I got several people after I said her name that tried to search her. And were texting.
And I was one of those people.
And was screenshotting me pictures of Jamie this, Jamie that. And then I said, no. And then I went and looked, and I realized we're not friends on Facebook anymore. We used to be. So that's the answer to that. We're not friends on Facebook anymore.
She dropped it like it was hot.
I don't know. Maybe it was because I got married. There was a lot of girls that unfriended me on Facebook after you hooked me in for life.
Well, as they should.
Matt lived outside of Phoenix City. He's actually an associate pastor at our church. This was a funny little back and forth. He lived outside of Phoenix City, and his wife taught at Smith Station. And from episode 1, he was wondering if those were the windows we busted out. We said that was my first crime ever committed. That was humorous to have that conversation with him. But those were actually not the windows that we busted out. We were in Phoenix City, the city of Phoenix City. We busted out the windows of Central Middle School, and Smith Station is on the outskirts of Phoenix City, so that was not that. Michelle, she commented that her husband had served time in federal prison, and she could identify with my story about my family, about when you go to prison, you take your family with you. She said that every day that he was there, it was as if she was there and her daughter was there too. And so she really identified with that. And she said to this day, and I think it's been years ago, her daughter still has anxiety and depression. And so we've been praying for her, and her daughter's trying to start a way to help young girls that have dads in prison, which I think is amazing.
That's awesome.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Linda, she said she could empathize. I mean, Linda is a person who doesn't understand crime and punishment or prison or nothing. She doesn't have any connection with that. But after listening to the story, she said she could empathize mostly with my mom and my grandmothers because, she's a mother, and that her heart just broke for my mom and for my granny and for my meemaw. And I appreciate that. And it's true. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times, but I think it always bears repeating. When we get in trouble, when we shipwreck our lives, it's not just us. We take the people that love us with us. Mm-hmm. And, to this day, I still, have a lot of sorrow about what I put my mama through and what I put my granny through and what I put my meemaw through and my aunts and uncles and cousins and friends and everybody that loved me. I mean, that's rough. I mean, and now that I'm a daddy, I couldn't imagine. So, and then finally, our last one that we're going to talk about, unless you want to add any before I do the finally?
No, I like this one. I think this one.
So finally, Brandy, she sent us a lot of feedback, but one of the last ones that she sent was, she said, I love this podcast, and it's my favorite podcast, and I listen to it. I look forward to it every Tuesday, but I love it because it's real.
Thank you, Brandy.
And you know me, I'm all about some real. I don't like anybody that's like putting on or, trying to live out anything scripted or, just trying to be something that they're not. Just, if you struggle, say you struggle. If you have a past, say you have a past. Like, maybe if you share your past, it'll help me with my future. I believe that's the way that God, intended it. There's a scripture that says if you want to be healed, confess your faults one to another and pray for one another that you may be healed. I mean, he forgives, but he says that we get healed when we take the mask off and tell our story, let it out. So that leads us to an announcement. we have gotten so much feedback from you guys on, I guess, just the dynamic between me and Haley. And honestly, we're not really, none of these things are scripted. We're just talking. We do say, okay, we're going to talk about this time period, and then we have some bullet points, and then we go through it. But you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, it really just started out of just us wanting to tell your story, because the reasons that you just said, that we know that he's not the only one, and I'm not the only one to have things that we've struggled with or make mistakes or having to live out consequences from our decisions. And it's been very, I mean, you've used the word healing and therapeutic, but very even helpful for us and healthy for us, I think, to talk about it. I mean, not only on this platform of a podcast, but with each other.
Yeah, get it out.
I mean, I feel like I've learned, even from you telling it chronologically and really taking yourself back there. I mean, I knew your story, obviously, but like every time we've sat down to record, I've learned something different and new, which has been really neat for me to kind of understand more and know more things. And I mean, I think that's true anytime that we tell our own story or hear someone else's story, that we learn and and it helps us, I don't know, grow and be, I mean, closer to each other, but also be more self-aware and grow within ourselves. I don't know if that makes sense. But.
Oh, that's good. That's great. So we're working on releasing some new content, and this content is, we're going to keep doing the Straight Out of Prison podcast.
We're about to grow some more.
We're going to continue with the Straight Out of Prison podcast. Season 2 will be dropping on February the 2nd. But for our Patreon subscribers, we're releasing some new content, and we're calling it the For Real Reel. That kind of sounds like I'm repeating real reel.
Opposed to the highlight reel.
So we've always, both of us, people, you only post on social media and you only really share like the highlight reel. Like you only tell the good stuff.
Or show the best picture with the best music, with the best filter.
Yes, with the best. Everything is it's a highlight reel. But
I do it too.
Well, we all do it. I mean, who wants to share something, the bad and ugly? I mean, I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying that's what we're used to getting. I mean, I always go back to the pictures of my kids because people say, oh, your kids are so photogenic and the pictures are beautiful. And I just love the picture you posted on 4th of July of the 3 of them sitting on a flag. If I could show you the 246 pictures around that it took for us to get that one, to get the one picture.
And the fighting the weeping and gnashing of teeth. I mean, if you have kids, you know what we're talking about. So
that's the highlight reel, is that one good picture. But what's really happening is all that other stuff and the screaming and hollering and all the, fussing and sit and smile and don't. And so we want to do something that's the opposite of a highlight reel. And just get real and talk about real stuff, real life. We're going to be releasing a new episode every week about what's really happening. And the reason why we want to do that, I just want to be honest with everybody. We've invested a lot of money into equipment and producing this podcast and hiring people to edit it.
And time.
And we needed at some point to start producing some kind of income.
So with that being said, you did talk about the Patreon. Let's say what that is.
Well, you say what it is.
Okay, so Patreon is basically, a lot of people have heard of it. I had not heard of it till we started this. But it's just a way for, if you're enjoying our story and getting something out of...
To support the show.
Hearing us every week. Yeah, it's a way to support us. And it's either $3, $5, or $10. So it's not, a lot of money, but it's just a way to... I guess it's just a way to support us. But with that support...
It produces income so that we can keep doing this.
Right. But with that support, we are wanting to give you even more content. And we
want to give you a reason to subscribe. We started the Patreon thing when we launched the podcast, and we are so grateful for all those who are already supporting us just because you love us. But we wanted to do some extra content so that it'll give you a reason. Like, I don't do things like that unless I have a reason. But if I know I'm going to get something that everybody else ain't getting, I'll do it. I mean, because $3 or $5 or $10 a month, that's not really that big of a deal. But we were going through the thing where you look into doing ads, And I just don't want to do ads. If it was something that I really loved, like PF Chang's, I would do an ad for PF Chang's because I love PF Chang's. But, if I got to get on here and talk about My Pillow, I ordered the My Pillow, but I don't like the My Pillow.
Okay, so I might talk him into doing ads later. So.
Maybe. This is a dynamic. I usually come around, but I'm not going to do an ad that I don't agree with.
This is a little snippet of the For Real right now.
Yes.
This is an argument that we've had.
But the bottom line is I want you to be able to pick up our podcast, mash play, and listen to it without being aggravated with, the side stuff. And I'm open to the idea of a sponsor. Like if you say, okay, this week's show is sponsored by Hobie Hobart State Farm in Fultondale, Alabama.
That's my brother, people.
I'm good with that if it's somebody that I respect and love. We're sponsored by Hurst Towing. He's a friend of mine.
That's
I love
our friends, and we love them
and
too.
I love their business. But the Holland AC people.
Yeah.
Anybody that if it's a real sponsor and somebody, or Chick-fil-A in Gardendale and Fultondale, we love those people. Those are our people. But I don't want to do the ads. So we've come up with a way to, because that frustrates me. If I had to do ads, I would be aggravated. And then I would be worried about, okay, they're getting to a good part of the podcast, and now they got to hear me talk about fingernail polish.
But he gets aggravated easily, so...
Well, I won't. When I'm listening to a podcast, when they start doing the ads, I just fast forward and I don't listen to them anyways.
Well, I do that too. But so back to.
So we want to be honest that we want to keep the show going, but we want to grow our audience, but we've got to do something to get subscribers. So we're going to do the For Real.
So what kind of things are we going to be talking about on the For Real? I have to say that. We are going to be kind of unpacking, talking about some of the fights that we've had.
Well, say fight. It's not like we walk around clawing at each other, hair and eyeballs and teeth.
Well, I mean, not every day.
But what we learned something when we were in our premarital counseling. The guy that did it, he said, you're going to have fights. It's unrealistic to act like you're not going to have fights because you're two different humans trying to become one. And the idea is you don't want to have a street fight. You want to have a boxing match, because a street fight is anything goes.
No rules.
But with a boxing match, there's rules, and there are things we don't do, and we've learned how to fight healthy.
Right. Well, bottom line, learn how to fight in a way that's productive.
And healthy, and actually moves the ball forward, because we're going to have disagreements, we're going to have conflict, we're going to have friction. And, well, me, if I bottle it up, eventually it's going to come. I think everybody's like that, though. If you bottle it up, eventually it's going to come out. Just how we navigate through some of that stuff. We want to talk about some of the stuff we're learning in real time, about each other, about our podcast, about our business, all things. Maybe give y'all some insights into our family dynamic. Definitely don't want to try to be models. People annoy me when they start trying to tell you how to raise your family. I'm a firm believer in, you make your own traditions, your own rules, your own family. You do it the way that, kind of like Andy Griffith told Opie when he was trying to get that raising his allowance. There are no rules for Pauls and sons. You know, every parent, they figured out, and I believe that God gives us the wisdom that we need for our family and for our kids. But we're going to we'll talk about some of that, but not in a, you need to do what we do.
Oh, for sure not. I mean, I'm a strong believer in, I don't care where you're at or, in life or what season of life, you can always learn from one another.
Absolutely.
And so, but in order to learn from each other, we have to talk to one another and, say the things. So, I mean, we're hoping to.
But some people don't have that healthy. Like, they think if we homeschool, then you need to homeschool. Everybody needs to homeschool.
Right.
And then people like us, we don't homeschool, but we don't think nobody else needs to homeschool. We think that we don't homeschool.
Wait, we don't think nobody else needs to.
We don't think that you shouldn't homeschool.
Oh,
we think homeschooling is great if you feel like you're called to that.
Right?
It's healthy, and we say that we don't homeschool now. We might next year. Who knows? We don't know. Nobody knows. So, The whole thing with that with me is you do you, let me do me. I don't judge you, you don't judge me. I mean,
which has been a fight when he says, "Listen, you're you and I'm me," and
that was actually one of our first fights.
Yeah, it was.
I'm me and I'm gonna be me. You're you, you're gonna be you. So insights into that, and some inside peeks into the Team Jones Company. I get a lot of questions about that. People want to know because it's kind of neat. It was neat before when we were just doing coaching and cooking, but now we're doing podcasting too. So it's getting neater.
And some other things that are coming up that are really exciting too. So
and then maybe even weighing in on current events. This last week we've had a couple weeks ago, all the stuff going down in our country is just a mess. And I was reminded, I had my phone watching people storm the Capitol of the United States of America, and it was awful. I never thought I would see anything like that. And just the stuff we had over the summer, and I was reminded of a guy that I heard at an art conference one time. He talked about his daddy was black, his mom was white, and his mom was like the whitest of white. His dad was like the blackest of black. And he was always stuck in the middle because when he was around his black family, he was the white boy. And when he was around his white family, he was the black boy. And he said he always thought it was a curse, but as he became an adult and started his own family, he realized that it was his biggest blessing because he learned how to be in the middle. And, Jesus was not a Republican. He was not a Democrat, even though both sides try to claim him. He was too liberal to be a conservative, and he was too conservative to be a liberal. He was in the middle, and I believe that's what he calls us to, is to stay in the middle. And that's how we have peace and live together and love and learn and, all the things. So we definitely want to be talking about some of that, but not anything political. Just like,
I was just going to say, it does make me a little nervous to open some cans of worms. And because I'm not really a debate. James likes to debate things. I am not a debater.
I wouldn't really say debate. I like to get to the bottom of what's really happening. Like, what is really happening? We don't, like, the status quo or what, people say. It's like, I've always been like that. Like, I need to know, like, what's really happening here. Like, I need to know. I can
get behind that. I like that. I just don't like the dramatics, the flares.
Well, there's certain, like, hot button issues you don't even want to open up. But sometimes you need to talk about them. I mean, we need to talk about race stuff in our country. We need to understand each other.
I agree.
Sure. I mean, some of that stuff I learned in prison, but, Big O, when I talk about him a lot, how he helped me understand the black community, he was actually preparing me because, 14, 15 years later, I would be called upon to help raise a black son. And Brandon, if you're listening, I love you.
Me too.
But just that's where we're going with that. So stay tuned to that. We'll be putting that on all our platforms, and it'll probably be on, everything.
Oh, and something else we forgot to mention that we'd like to include on that is we hope to bring on some people that James has talked about.
Oh, yeah.
To interview.
Absolutely.
And for them to just tell a little bit of
their story.
Yeah, of their story. So that's going to be awesome. Once
we get through telling the Team Jones story, which looks like it's going to be 3 or 4 seasons, I'm going to bring other people on. I have a friend that worked for me at the Foundry. He did 32 years in prison, and he is almost 70 years old, and he's living his best life. And when I first launched this podcast, I told him, I want to have you on at some point, when we start interviewing others. And he was all for it. And then he came back, about 5 episodes in. He was like, I don't know. The way Haley asks questions, I don't know if I'm ready for that.
I don't even think I'm that direct.
But I told him, I said, you don't have to answer the question if you don't want to. And it can be edited out.
Yeah.
If you don't want to answer the question, you don't have to. But I've had a lot of feedback from people that I know, and then a lot of feedback from people that I don't know. Like, hey, are you ever going to, tell other people's stories? And the answer to that is yes, I would love to when we get there. But we're going to finish this story first. One thing we didn't do, if people want to look up the Patreon thing, how would they do that now?
So go to our website and
teamjones.co, not com.
Right, .co. So teamjones.co/podcast.
And there's a link.
And when you get there, you could click on to listen to the podcast from there, but there's also a link that says become a patron.
Okay. Or you
Or
could look up,
patron. I don't know if I ever say that right. Is it patron or patron?
it's spelled Patreon, Patreon, but it means patron.
Right.
But or if you could go to
that.
you could go to their website, patreon.com. Or
right. Team Jones is probably just an easier way to do it,
Yeah.
because you could just click on become a patron, and it'll take you and just show you how to support the show and what you're going to get when you do that.
Okay. And also on every social media post I do for the Straight Outta Prison podcast on Instagram and Facebook, there is a link to that Patreon, to the Team Jones Patreon page. So I guess season 1's a wrap. That has been a trip going through this and all the journals, and Lord, it's been some days I would read those and get depressed, and then other days I'm like just thankful that I've gotten through that.
It is crazy. I don't know if I've mentioned this in the past episodes, but James has journals from literally 25 years back.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane to me. Like filled journals. Like I probably have a good 30 journals that have a half a page filled in each one, because then I lose it or stop writing. But he has these journals that are like filled, like every page front and back, dated back from 1995. It's so crazy. So he's been reading those before we record to just, jog his memory and bring him back to that place. Yeah. And you even have forgotten several things.
A lot of stuff I forgot if I haven't read the journals. Yeah.
So, I mean, my memory is, I don't remember anything pretty much. I forget stuff. But one thing we wanted to say too is that as you listen to the next season, if you have questions, please
send them to us.
Send them to, email them to it, like social media, whatever, because we do want to answer those questions as we go along or at the end of the season. So ask them, because we want to hear.
And we'll be doing a season 2 recap. So anything season 2 gets very interesting. Very interesting.
So I think that pretty much wraps it up. Was there anything else?
That's a wrap. Just season 2. We're calling that season 2, episode 1 is Sweet Home, Alabama. I'm leaving BCI. They put me in a transport van. What I think is going to be 10 hours turns into like a 3-day trip to get to Montgomery. And then we'll see what happens from there.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you.
See you next time.
Bye. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe to the page. It helps us to continue doing what we do. Or if you know someone this could help, just hit that share button and send them a text. It's so easy to share. And leave me your comments and your suggestions. I listen to every one of them, and I try to respond to every one of them. They really matter. And for more, look me up on Facebook and Instagram, Chef James K. Jones. That's also in the About section of my channel. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching and continuing to support the fun stuff that we're doing.